Hello and welcome to the Oscars special of the Radio Times podcast. The nominations are out, the battle lines have been drawn. We're going to take a look at everything to do with the ceremony today. I'm here with Associate Editor of RadioTimes.com, Susanna Lazarus, and Sci-fi Editor Hugh Fullerton.
Oh, nearly forgot his surname then, didn't you? That would have been awkward.
I also should note that for the people listening at home, I waved. I don't know why, you can't tell. I waved at the microphone.
Always nice to acknowledge your name.
Yeah.
So we're going to kick things off by talking about Roma and The Favourite, which both have 10 nominations each. They're the big hitters here. Roma is Alfonso Cuarón's semi-autobiographical film about his childhood in Mexico in the 1970s. And The Favourite is Yorgos Lanthimos' strange period drama about Queen Anne and her aides who are fighting for her favour. So they both have 10 nominations each. Have you've both seen?
Yeah.
Both seen The Favourite?
I love The Favourite.
Yeah. I love The Favourite too. I think I preferred Roma if I had to pick one, but they're so different. It's hard to kind of put them between each other.
Isn't it fun to have two frontrunners that are so different?
Yes, absolutely.
It's astonishing. We should say, like, Roma. We'll get into the Netflixness of it later, but Roma, just as a foreign language, Mexican black and white film without a plot, it's crazy that it's the Oscars frontrunner, basically. I mean, maybe not in every category, but it's got joint most nominations. That's kind of great, and also a little surprising, I suppose. If you were to jump back, 6 months, I don't think anyone would have called that.
Yeah, but then you think about the Oscars as a ceremony that does reward distinctiveness. Think back to The Artist or Boyhood. I definitely came out of both of those films feeling like I'd seen something that I'd never really seen before.
True, that's true. Boyhood's a good example.
I do think that both of them still do play into a much broader audience than Roma does, though. And I think Roma, I know Netflix, I don't think they've told us how many people have viewed Roma the same way they have done with Bird Box.
I'm sure they will soon.
I'm sure they will. Well, the fact that they haven't might tell us that, one, not that many people have even started that. I'm sure it's still in the millions. It's still more than would have seen it in a cinema. But I think there's a lot of people, and I've read takes on this online, saying that people are falling asleep watching it. They're not getting through it because it's not an easy watch. I think it's really rewarding as you get into it, but it does take some time. It's light on plot, and I just think it's by far the most out there, and I can see it winning the Foreign Film Award. But
I was wondering about that actually, because obviously there's actually a few kind of breakout foreign language films this year, because Cold War as well is another one that's not just up for foreign language films, also up for Best Director and I want to say I can't remember what the other one is, like cinematography or something, I can't remember. But yeah, it's kind of, I wonder if because Roma is in so many other categories, maybe something like Shoplifters or Cold War or something else might have more luck in the Best Film in a Foreign Language category, because Roma might do well elsewhere. That would be interesting. It'd be interesting as well if it won Best Foreign Language and then also won Best Picture or something else.
Just the best film
just
all around.
all the best stuff.
This must be, Ben, you cover Netflix a lot. This must feel like a real game changer for a service like Netflix to be, not just nominated for multiple Oscars, nominated for the most Oscars out of all of these contenders.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it kind of shows us, I guess it's an indication of what is to come. They clearly were going for this. They've been trying to do this for a while, I think. I think them buying this and then turning the Coen Brothers Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which has also been nominated for two or three awards, I think. 3 awards. By turning that into a film, it was originally meant to be a series. I think they have been playing for an award because they've kind of got the domination of the audience at the moment. It feels like, especially in the last month or so, everything that's coming out on Netflix is one of the major talking points of the, say on social media. Bird Box was major. It's not going to come into play in the award season, but like you see, everything that's coming out at the moment is becoming a big part of the conversation. So they're getting this now critical recognition, or industry recognition of this sort seems like a massive step forward for them.
And it feels like a massive step forward for the Oscars as well. I think it was about time that an on-demand services offering was seriously considered and lauded by a big industry body like the Oscars. They've looked a bit backward, I think, in previous years, where Netflix has lobbied hard to get nominations and the Academy haven't always rewarded them for that.
Well, they've I think we were talking about this at some point with James, our on-demand editor. Netflix have assembled this team who's basically, I might be sort of oversimplifying, but I think they basically have been working towards this for a few years with Beast of No Nation, which Idris Elba was in, and that I don't think it ended up getting any Oscar.
But they lobbied really hard for that.
And it got some BAFTA nominations and stuff. And then Mudbound last year, which got a cinematography nod, I think.
And Mary J. Blige, I think, was nominated for.
Yeah, and she was for supporting actress. And I think The Song maybe was nominated last year. So they're kind of, it's been just getting larger and larger, and now they're at the point where, I mean, I think it's cleverly cultivated as well, because it's very hard. It's the sort of film that the Oscars love, sort of very personal portrait from a director who, people is beloved, and it's very arty and it's black and white, and it doesn't have much of a plot, so it's easier for the Oscars people to kind of accept it.
Yeah.
Rather than if it was a less traditional Netflix. Traditional's the wrong word.
But I wonder if this will mark a shift in how the talent view working on Netflix. Obviously, Netflix is full of big A-list talent at the moment, but I wonder whether in the past they've looked at films produced on Netflix and thought, okay, that could raise my profile. Will it win me an award? Probably not. Whereas now,
it might attract the auteurs.
Yes, exactly. I mean, look at when you've got the caliber of talent behind Roma doing a film for Netflix. I reckon that will be commonplace in a kind of awardsy sense.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
And I think, you're kind of already seeing that now. We've got Steven Soderbergh is doing 2 Netflix films this year. Martin Scorsese has his next film coming out on Netflix. So it's already, that shift is really starting to happen. So on that kind of note, talking about, I guess that's kind of what we see as the future of Hollywood. The Best Picture race is looking like it's being boiled down to Green Book versus Roma, which in some narratives I've seen is being made as Green Book being old Hollywood. It's a story from the 1960s. It's been somewhat controversial, which we'll come on to, but Roma being the opposite. Then it's the new format. It's not made by an old studio like Green Book is. It's from Netflix. It's on demand. It's only in a certain amount of theaters. So that's an interesting battle now. I've seen Green Book, which it was relatively enjoyable. I think the controversy, which we should say, is that I think some of the family of the main character, which is Mahershala Ali, he plays a musician from the 1960s called Dr.
Donald Shirley, I believe.
That's it. Dr. Shirley, thank God you said that, because I was not going to remember.
I can see you panic in your eyes now.
Dr. Donald Shirley, his family have disputed the portrayal of him in the film, and that's the main controversy. There's other things, but we won't get into that now.
Doesn't seem to have hurt it though. I mean, it's still being nominated across the board in terms of in an award sense.
Yeah, and also it's the thing people usually use as an indicator as to what will win Best Picture is what wins Best Picture at the Producers Guild of America, because there's quite a large crossover in voters, and Green Book won that.
Yes.
Equally, the Academy have added quite a lot of new members over the last few years, so it could be that kind of overlap is reduced. I don't really know. I can't remember if it was the same if last year the PGA also won.
All I know is that 8 out of the last 10
right.
Best Picture winners had won the Producers Guild Award.
But not all.
Not all, exactly.
No, we should remember that. I guess when you are trying to predict award season, you're looking at these big ceremonies that kind of announce their winners in the lead up to the Oscars, and we've had things like Producers Guild, and we've had Critics' Choice, and we've had Golden Globes, but I mean, that's what we're going to take as our basis, but we should remember that they're not always and like you make a very good point that the Oscars have added a lot of new members in recent years. They've tried to diversify.
And we have seen
Kendrick
that change,
Lamar
I think.
being one of these.
Yeah, I think we have seen that change. Like even in the last 3 awards, there's been many more upsets than you'd expect. Obviously, the La La Land Moonlight thing is a particular highlight. But
you weren't working there. I remember being staring at my TV screen at about 5 in the morning, thinking, "Oh, I'm done. I can go to sleep," and then just watching carnage unfold on stage.
Brilliant.
But this is the thing. I mean, Moonlight was not expected to win that. Everyone thought that La La Land fitted the Oscars thing, what the Academy want from movies. It's about Hollywood, that kind of thing. So I think there's always room for upset. Green Book is, I think, potentially going into it the favourite. Because
the favourite is
the favourite is the favourite. Sadly, the favourite is not the favourite. I would be quite excited if the favourite was to win.
I think it's interesting though, because the favourite has 10 nominations, so top tied with Roma. Yeah. I mean, we'll go into our predictions later, but I'm going to go out there and say I don't think the favourite will pick up any of the major awards that we're going to discuss.
It's often the way. I mean, the Vice and A Star Is Born have 8 nominations as well. I mean, will they do well? Do you think?
I think Vice I mean, yeah, we'll kind of come on to stage, but I think Vice stands a pretty good chance at Best Actor.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Star is Born, I'm not so sure that it'll pick up any of the majors.
It's a funny one because the way that the conversation moves around films, because a few months ago, A Star is Born looked like...
Was the dead cert.
This is a lock, Bradley Cooper's big moment, you know. And, you know, he's still nominated for actor and stuff, but he wasn't nominated for director.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I should also say, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the kind of old Hollywood versus new Hollywood and upsets and things. For me, Black Panther kind of fits into the new Hollywood marker, because obviously the big story is Black Panther's been nominated for Best Picture, which people had kind of thought this could be the Marvel movie to break through. It's the first superhero movie, pretty much, to be nominated for Best Picture. It is the first. It's just it is definitely the first. I'm not going to go into the weird thing. There's a couple of non-superhero films that have just some. It doesn't matter.
You were talking to me the other day about how when it came to Dark Knight and the snub.
This is exactly 10 years ago. The Best Picture race used to have 5 categories, and The Dark Knight, which was the critically acclaimed Christopher Nolan's second Batman film, wasn't nominated for Best Picture, partly because there wasn't space for it. And there was this big uproar, and after that year they extended the potential list of nominees to 10. It's not normally 10, as long as it's fewer. This year it's 8. But it has kind of paved the way for Black Panther. Oh yeah, Birdman, that was the one I was thinking of. Birdman has some superhero elements, but that doesn't really count.
No, I don't think that counts.
But Black Panther's nominated for Best Picture, and also it's a lot of technical categories, production and costume, and also in Best Original Score and Original Song. So I'm hoping it does well. It's interesting. Suicide Squad has won an Oscar for makeup, so it wouldn't be the first Oscar-winning superhero movie ever.
No, but the Best Picture nomination just feels pretty like a real occasion to be marked.
Totally, and it's Marvel's first bite at it, really. I think. I mean, they've been nominated for technical categories a few times, but
do you think there's past Marvel films that should have been nominated?
I don't know. It's tricky because you get into the mindset, don't you, with the Oscars and these award ceremonies. It's a certain kind of film. And Black Panther is closer to being that sort of film. It doesn't mean that I think it's worth more than other Marvel films. But obviously, Infinity War was a huge cultural moment. I don't think anyone expected that to be nominated for more than visual effects, which it is nominated for. Black Panther kind of was a bit of a crossover, appeasing the kind of popular crowd, while also nodding at kind of more serious themes to do with colonialism and racism and kind of family dynamics and things like that. So you can kind of feel like this was, again, if Netflix had been making a play, this could have been Marvel's play. So I don't know. It's not going to win Best Picture. I hope it wins something. I hope it wins something creative as well.
But it's also nice to see, obviously, last year the Academy tried to add a most best popular movie category, which, you know, sort of crashed in on itself. But it is nice to see that despite that not happening, we can now see a film like Black Panther in that mainstream category instead of having it in a token, best popular film category.
Well, I felt like when they announced that, because that was supposed to be for this year, I think, that was the Black Panther category. It felt like that was their way to let Black Panther win and then to all pat each other on the back. But then obviously people didn't like it because it felt like it was ghettoising the films. I mean, arguably the categories for Best Animated Feature and for Best Feature in a Foreign Language kind of do that anyway, because, you know, like, this is another superhero film, but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is nominated for animated feature, but really it should be nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay because it's an incredible film, and it won't be because it's in that thing. And I
feel like they've covered it off.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas I feel like if there had been a Best Popular Film, we definitely wouldn't have had Black Panther in Best Picture contender.
Yeah,
contention.
Absolutely. I also think that Spider-Verse had a shade for Best Picture as well. But that's
I just didn't want to say that because I felt like people would laugh at me. But yeah, it's honestly so good.
There you go, Ben.
I think in a different world maybe, but as it is,
a lot of people don't take animation seriously.
No, and people don't take superhero things seriously. Logan obviously had a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination last year, so things are changing. Yeah, but so that's good.
That leads us quite nicely into our next topic, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we're going to have a look at some of the snubs, some of the people that were left out of the Oscars, and I want to start this off by just saying how upset I am that Ethan Hawke, he's never gotten an Oscar. He's due one, and First Reformed, film by Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver, about this priest going through this kind of existential crisis about the future of the world with global warming and everything. It was one of the most affecting films I've seen. I saw last year. It really stayed with me. And he's incredible in Ethan Hawke. I've loved him throughout loads of films over the years, but this one felt like it could have been his year. He was on the trail. He was, you know, doing lots of interviews and going to screenings in the lead up, but he just missed out this year. Which
it's
is
quite sad. He seems like a nice guy as well.
He is a nice guy. I've interviewed him. He's a lovely man. He's a fascinating man. I think I had about half an hour and I wanted half a day just to chat to him. He was really great.
What was that for?
That was for, there's a film, it was actually just after Boyhood had come out. It wasn't for that, it was for a film all about drone wars. Not drone wars, like kind of war through drones.
Okay.
Was that film that Alan Rickman was in?
No,
okay.
It wasn't. This is a good conversation.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name of the film.
Also, Birdhood is that Birdman and Boyhood crossover that everyone's been
it's when you watch Michael
accidentally
Keaton.
Invented something there.
You watch Michael Keaton running around in his underwear over 12 years. He was nominated, Ethan Hawke, for Boyhood, wasn't he?
Yes, I think so.
But he missed out there. Patricia Arquette.
She won, didn't she?
She won, yeah.
I believe so.
But you know, Ethan Hawke's a big snub. Also, I think for some people, Timothée Chalamet for Beautiful Boy. It's not like, I don't think I'm that surprised that he wasn't nominated, if that makes sense.
He was never one of those people who was talked up at the top of that category. But at the same time, based off the back of Call Me By Your Name, I still think of him as quite an Oscars darling.
Yeah.
And I was a little surprised, I would say, that he wasn't nominated.
It's very Oscar baity film as well. You know, it's father-son trauma over his like drug addiction, lots of yelling.
And it's Sam Elliott who's come in here instead of him. So I guess that's kind of again evidence of A Star Is Born being this kind of very Oscar baity film, whereas Beautiful Boy hasn't really landed. Dizzy heights.
I think
is it nominated for anything? I don't think it's.
Beautiful Boy, I don't think so.
I don't think it got anything because First Reformed got a screenplay nomination at least, so that's something.
It wasn't very well received critically, A Beautiful Boy, and I think Chalamet's time will come. I think he's still very young. I think he is loved in the industry and obviously on social media massively. I think he'll get there eventually.
He's so young as well. Like it's perfectly fine that he hasn't won an Oscar.
And he's going to
early 20s.
He's playing Teddy in Little Women, which I think in a year or two may well be Oscar bait. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Little Women, that's a Saoirse Ronan thing, and she's also not got any presence here. She's a bit of an Oscar favourite in past years for things like Brooklyn and Lady Bird.
I think interesting because Mary Queen of Scots felt like a very Oscars baity film because it had some real, like you say, Saoirse Ronan behind it. Also Margot Robbie involved, who's had Oscar nominations in the past. Yeah,
it felt like it's sort of historical people in frocks, which they like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I have to say, I thought the two leads were fantastic in Mary Queen of Scots. A lot of people are talking about the director Josie Rourke not getting a Best Director nomination and sort of lamenting that because we've got this all-male category. Yeah. I do think it's a shame that in such a prestigious awards we do have an all-male directors category. I have to say, I was a little bit bored in Mary Queen of Scots.
Really? It does look a little bit boring.
I mean, it's so up my street. I love the Tudors. I love historical films. I thought the main two actresses were particularly good. I just quite bored in the film, so I'm not going to really rant and wail about Josie Rourke not getting a nomination because for me it wasn't quite in the same league as some of these other films.
I think one of the other people they mentioned in that possibly being left out of the directors was Marielle Heller, who did Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that film, but I wouldn't have. It didn't massively compared to Diary of a Teenage Girl, which was her first film, which was amazing. This I thought it was okay. It was quite enjoyable, but it didn't massively grab me. So I'm not. Again, it's one of those ones where it's sort of like I'm not that I expect people to be excluded, but I'm often not surprised when they are. Equally, though, we sort of should say Bradley Cooper's also.
That was the thing everyone was talking about. Was that I feel gutted for him because I feel like when your film has 8 nominations but you don't get the Best Director nod, that was pretty cruel.
It's Ben Affleck and Argo all over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kind of hope that they can win Best Picture and Bradley Cooper can go up on stage and
It's harsh because he started to take himself very seriously this year, and he must feel like that is not reciprocated.
We still just like your face, Bradley.
Yeah, because he's got a Best Actor nomination, hasn't he?
To be fair, I think now everyone looks back at Argo and thinks what were we thinking? So I mean, I still quite like Argo, but I think everyone was like, okay, we got a bit carried away, so maybe that's not the best comparison for Ben.
I think it is a shame. I think he's done a really good job on his first time out. I think it's a really well directed movie.
And to have a first time actress, admittedly already a huge star, but Lady Gaga has not acted really before, and she's got an Oscar nomination, so you've got to give a little bit of credit for that. To the director, I think.
Completely.
And I always feel like if your film is nominated, you're kind of nominated, right, as a director. I know technically it goes to the producers, but if it's the best film, a big part of that is the guy making the film. So,
it's not like the other awards bodies have snubbed Bradley Cooper. Everyone else seems to have gone for him. It's just Oscars that he's.
And I'd say that it must hurt. And I really do think it's a very well directed film. A lot of what is like successful about A Star Is Born is that it feels really natural at certain points. When Lady Gaga's singing in the car park at the start, and there's a few conversations throughout, and I think he made the point of not doing like line for line rehearsals, and he kind of just let this natural flow get into it. I really think he's made his mark on the film industry this year through that. But yeah, it's a shame that he's missed out. And that's pretty much it. That we like the main snubs I think that we can think of. There is a few. Few that we're happy about, just to end on a more positive note.
Anti-snubs. I don't know what you call them. I'm trying to think how to say snubs backward. Spuns. Which
I guess not made that up.
Spuns, yeah, spuns. Just as in terms of like people who you wouldn't necessarily have expected to get nominated, but you're happy that they are.
Exactly, yes. Everyone was going crazy about Richard E. Grant.
Yeah.
I think we were going crazy about Richard E. Grant because Richard E. Grant went crazy about it. His reaction was adorable.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Not to be that guy. I spoke to Richard yesterday. I chatted to him about the film, and he was really blown away by the whole thing. He said I think it's not something he had thought about.
From Spice World the movie to the Oscars.
Well, it's funny.
What a trajectory.
He had like a tiny guest role in Game of Thrones like a year or two ago, and he's like, a little recurring part in a series of unfortunate events. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're, Oscar nominated. It's just a funny thing.
That's great. I was really happy to see Rachel Weisz nominated because I thought she was like equally as good as Emma Stone and arguably Olivia Colman in The Favourite.
She is my favourite in The Favourite.
Really, yeah.
I came away adoring Rachel Weisz, so yeah, I'm pleased too. I guess I'm not as surprised because I feel like she has scored nominations pretty regularly, but I'm delighted to see her there.
You wonder if they were going to pick one, they'd pick Emma Stone because she's American and doing an accent.
A flawless accent.
Yeah,
we should give credit to that.
Yeah, that's any other.
Well, I guess Roma as well, getting a Best Actress nomination. I don't want to try and pronounce her name.
Yalitza. We'll do the first bit. It's Yalitza.
And also Best Supporting Actress as well.
Oh yes.
Yes, which is a surprise. I'm also. This makes it sound very bad. It's Marina de Tavira is nominated. She plays the mother. That was a real surprise for me. Like, she's good at it. It's just that was not on my radar at all.
And I think plenty of people have come out, and especially for Yalitza in that Best Actress category, I feel like there's a lot of delighted people in the industry when they saw that nomination.
For sure, it was her first time ever acting.
Yeah, she was a teaching assistant or training to be one.
Remarkable, really. If you look at that Best Actress category, has 2 first-timers in it.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Crazy.
Is this a good kind of segue into us talking about who we think is going to win Best Actress and all the other categories?
I think it is indeed.
Should we start with Best Actress because we were just talking about it?
Sure.
So we should say it's Yalitza Aparicio. I'm going to go for Aparicio for Roma, Glenn Close for The Wife, Olivia Colman for The Favourite, Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me? Mm-hmm. Ben, who do you think?
I think it's Glenn Close, and I'm not necessarily delighted about it, having not seen The Wife, which I really need to do. I would love to see Olivia Colman perhaps take this one, but I think Glenn Close has it.
I feel like I'd love to see an Olivia Colman acceptance speech because she is always flawless when she's accepting awards. But I agree. I think Glenn Close, and I think also you've got to bear in mind Hollywood and the Oscars. They love a story. Like look at Leonardo DiCaprio and his win for The Revenant. Like that kind of almost felt inevitable because everyone was willing him along. Glenn Close is a 6-time nominee. She's never won.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
And I think that may, not to take anything away from her performance, but I think that may come into play if you've got a very tight race between her and Olivia Colman and potentially Lady Gaga. I think that might push Glenn Close over the line.
I think you might be right. Again, like Ben, I'd love Olivia Colman to win, but I think the Glenn Close performance sort of feels quite Oscar-y as well. I know I keep on saying that, it's quite stereotypical, but just the kind of lots of shouting and crying and things.
Yeah, and it should be said that I think it is a movie for the older generations, and I think a lot of the Academy members are older generational people. Yeah. No shade to them. We go to Best Actor then, I guess, from there.
Yeah.
Is the best one.
Best Actor, we should say. We've got Christian Bale for Vice, Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born, Willem Dafoe for At Eternity's Gate, Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody, and Viggo Mortensen for Green Book.
Mm-hmm. I think we're pretty much agreed on this, that we think it's going to be Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Because he puts on a fat suit.
Yes. Hollywood loves a transformation.
Yeah. Or Rami Malek for putting in the teeth. he gained weight and he
was there a fat suit as well?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, wow,
I think it was a combat.
Oh yeah, he must be. I really.
I mean, he's different weights throughout the film. I know he's done that before in The Machinist, but
it is, having seen Vice, a remarkable performance. I did not adore Vice as a movie, but I could hardly fault Christian Bale for it.
Yeah,
it's similar for me with Bohemian Rhapsody. Like I think it's a fun film. To be honest, I think it's one of the most badly reviewed films ever to be winning Golden Globes and things.
Really,
I read that somewhere, yeah.
Wow.
But he's good in it, and that is, he kind of pushes the whole thing through, and I bet it was very difficult to act with those massive teeth.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's interesting. I think that, you know, when the Golden Globes were announced, we had Christian Bale and Rami Malek winning those two major categories. I think maybe that the Golden Globes take place before Oscars voting starts, I think. So I reckon those two films probably got a second look in a way that they might not have otherwise if the Golden Globes hadn't announced those
that's
winners.
a good point. Yeah, because people might have almost forgotten Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah. And then revisited it with more forgiving eyes.
We should also, if we mention Green Book's controversy, we should mention there's some controversy around Bohemian Rhapsody, but we won't go into. But it's just look it up.
I would just play devil's advocate on this. I think there's two outside shouts for Bradley Cooper and Viggo. Viggo has not won an Oscar before, as far as I know, and he is beloved. So small chat, and Green Book seems to be very popular.
Oh, we've said literally everyone except Willem Dafoe. But here's who we definitely think is going to win. It's one of the five.
And then Bradley, just on the off chance that they're like, well, we're not giving them directors.
What a pity vote.
That's what Leo won for. That's Leo won for pity. Like Revenant, he just grunted for 3 hours.
He is very good.
He climbed inside the carcass of a bear.
Like, they were like, okay, you've done enough.
Bradley is very good in The Star Is Born as well, has to be said. Okay, maybe we'll go to Best Supporting Actor from there. So we got Mahershala Ali for Green Book, Adam Driver for Black Klansman, Sam Elliott for A Star Is Born, Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Sam Rockwell for Vice.
I think Mahershala Ali.
Yeah,
that seems to be it.
Should we just end the discussion? That's surely...
it feels like a bit of a... I can't really put anything between any of them. Like, none of them really stand out, but he has been winning the awards so far.
Yeah. He stands out.
Yeah, and also, I mean, he won a couple of years ago for Moonlight, and he's an excellent actor, so, you know...
It's interesting, but... sorry, continue.
So also, going to name drop again, very nice guy.
Oh, there you go. I don't know why I let you do that. It is interesting that in this category you do have Mahershala Ali and Sam Rockwell, who have both won very recently.
That's a really good point. It's nice for Adam Driver to get a nomination. We were saying before, Ben, that like Adam Driver at some point I think is going to do it. I don't think this is the year for that.
No, I feel like I'm actually surprised that he's nominated and John David Washington isn't nominated first. He's the lead in Black Klansman.
But maybe it's because the lead is more competitive.
More competitive, yeah, true.
Yeah. So maybe, I'm sure they put him forward, but it just had too much to go against.
You're right, it just came out this way. I think the only other, I think it's probably between Mahershala and Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be Mahershala personally.
Yeah.
Then we got Best Supporting Actress. So
shall I read out some nominations?
Please do.
We have Amy Adams for Vice. I feel like I'm on stage. Marina de Tavira for Roma, Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk, Emma Stone, and Rachel Weisz for The Favourite.
I think we all disagree on this a bit. I think.
Why don't you start, Hugh?
I think it will be one of the favourite people, and I'm probably wrong, but I just feel like, I mean, the odds are in their favour. But also I just feel like they both give such good performances, and I don't know if any of the others, Marina from Roma, I can't see that happening. Regina King, obviously she's been doing quite well, but she hasn't even been nominated at some things, and Beale Street isn't really repped anywhere else.
Beale Street is hardly repped, is it?
Yeah,
it's really
surprising.
Yeah, I'm surprised too.
Amy Adams, obviously she's kind of a bit of a Leo in that people have wanted her to win for ages. She's been nominated for a few things like Arrival and American Hustle, things I haven't seen Vice. So
she's very, very good.
So I just can't really.
I think she's wonderful in Vice. To me, she's probably the runner-up here because I'm going to completely disagree with you and say I think Regina King will take this. I think it is interesting. You're right. You know, she won at Critics' Choice and she won again at the Golden Globes. She has not been nominated for a BAFTA or a Screen Actors Guild Award, so her peers haven't nominated her.
Yeah, and obviously some of those peers are voting in this.
It is telling, but I think there's a lot of goodwill behind her.
Sure.
And I think I think a lot of people will have looked at her performance off the back of the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice. I don't feel much momentum behind either of the favourite actresses. I feel like maybe one of them could win at BAFTA because Regina isn't nominated in that category and they feel like a possible
It could
winner
also,
there.
to be fair, it could also split the vote a bit. The fact that there's two of them in the category, if people who like the favourite, they might...
Absolutely.
I think you're
Counts
right.
against them. I think Regina, if not Regina, Amy Adams.
Okay. Ben?
I'm going to go with Regina as well, because, and on that basis, that I think you're right. I think it will split the vote between the two favourite gals. And I'm just going off of, I haven't seen If Beale Street Could Talk. I'm seeing it in a week or so. I've heard it's a very quiet film, which might be why it hasn't had a massive, haul here of nominations. But I believe she's fantastic in it, and she won at the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards. And so then from there we will look at Best Director.
I feel like you have to do the nominations here because I was really impressed with your pronunciation.
Yeah, you were smashing it earlier.
So, you go for it.
Fair enough. Okay, so we got Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, Yorgos Lanthimos for The Favourite, Spike Lee for Black Klansman, Adam McKay for Vice, and Paweł Pawlikowski for Cold War.
Very good.
Thank you, I was proud of myself there.
I think Alfonso.
This is Alfonso.
Yeah, he's been sweeping the board.
It just sort of, that feels like the kind of narrative to me. I don't know. It's always really hard to tell, but the Oscars are easier to predict than the BAFTAs. Oddly, I don't know why. I think it's because the BAFTAs just a bit weird. But with the Oscars, this kind of feels right. It's a very technically proficient film as well. Like it's very showy in terms of direction, not in a bad way. It's just that it's lots of long takes. It's all in black and white. It's very sedate. It's wonderful cinematography. Like you kind of see it on screen a lot more than you might. I mean, The Favourite you do as well, actually, because of all the fisheye stuff and again quite long sweeping takes. But I think it's the sort of directing that wins awards.
I think you're right. I think one thing to say is that he's also up for Best Cinematography. So if there was anything to potentially stop people from voting for Best Director, they might be.
Is he up
as
for
far
that?
as I know.
Well, is it him or his cinematographer?
No, he did the cinematography.
So that was because I thought I'd read that.
See, to me, that's only going to build your momentum.
Yeah, that's just
almost more
they're going to be
impressive,
like,
isn't
they're
it?
going to be like, what a guy.
And I know this probably isn't a good way of looking at it, but I'm wondering where The Favourite is going to win of these 10 nominations.
Yeah, I think it probably comes into costume and makeup and things like that. I think will probably be where we see it. I do think I should point out that in costume design category, there's a woman called Sandy Powell who was nominated twice.
She's having a good night.
She designed The Favourite. She also did Mary Poppins Returns, so odds on for her taking that category.
Imagine if you didn't know.
You've got to at least write a speech, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're all going with Cuarón then for Roma for that one. Then we got Best Adapted Screenplay. Hugh, do you want to roll us?
Best Adapted Screenplay, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Klansman, Can You Ever Forgive Me, If Beale Street Could Talk, A Star Is Born.
I'm going to go with The Star Is Born here.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be
Bradley.
nice.
I'd like it if Black Klansman won that. I don't know, because Black Klansman's got a fair few nominations, it's got 6, and I feel like that's... The screenplay ones tend to be where they reward the slightly more experimental films, like Get Out won last time.
So I will say that for Writers Guild, Ballad of Buster Scruggs is the only one in this category that was not nominated. They put Black Panther in instead. Yeah,
see, that would be interesting. Adapted Screenplay had Logan in last year, so this could have been one where Black Panther slipped in, or Into the Spider-Verse if you wanted to go that way. But as it is, it's tricky. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm going to go with The Star Is Born. Yeah.
And then original screenplay, we've got The Favourite, First Reformed, Green Book, Roma, and Vice.
Original Roma again?
If in doubt, Roma.
I don't think Roma will be.
It's probably not got enough of a screenplay, which is a silly thing to say, but maybe that's what people will think, is that because it's so naturalistic, and maybe then they'd go for... It'd be nice if The Favourite won there, I think. Or First Reformed is only nomination.
Well, interestingly, The Favourite and First Reformed were not nominated by Writers Guild, and I think this is an area where we can really look quite hard at Writers Guild.
Could be Vice then. Vice is quite snappy, isn't it?
Yeah,
like the
I
dialogue
can see. As always, Adam McKay is very clever and snappy would be a good word.
I guess we can't go into absolutely every nomination, so we should probably end with... I'm going to say Spider-Verse should win Best Animated, if you're listening, voters. But we should do the big one, right?
Let's end with Best Picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Best Picture nominees are Black Klansman, Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, or Bo Rap, The Favourite, Green Book, Roma, A Star Is Born, and Vice. So, Hugh, lead us off. Who's going to win?
Who's going to win? What do I think and what do I want?
Let's have both quickly.
Okay, I think... sorry, I will try and not mull over this over too much. It's tricky because I kind of feel like Roma could win it, and I would quite like Roma to win it. I also feel like Green Book could win it. But then it just feels like... I know the momentum has been behind it, but I just feel like it just doesn't feel like exciting enough. to me for it to win. But then again, it's quite an open category, so it could be that that splits it a bit and something surprising wins. I'm going to go for Roma.
Okay, great. And that's that you both want to win and...
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if Black Panther won, but I think it'd just be a bit silly.
Yes, fine.
I think Roma too. I think this is one of those things that I could totally change my mind halfway through the awards, because I think the winner of this will likely be whichever film builds the most momentum.
True.
And Roma has so many nominations that if it starts winning, you know, in some of the acting categories, for example, in the cinematography and director, it feels like a shoo-in for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Having said that, you know, you do sometimes find that the film with all the nominations fails to convert most of them, in which case I probably wouldn't bet on it. But ahead of the ceremony, Roma feels like the one to beat. I would actually love the favourite to win, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Green Book is going to win. I just have this feeling in my gut that people are going to be upset about it, and I think it's probably not the right answer, but I think it will. It just feels like it's broad enough, and I think there's going to be enough people that put it as number 2 or number 3 on the preferential ballot thing that it'll do it.
I mean, the producers agree with you. It is the Producers Guild.
Yeah, I think that's a smart way of thinking about it. Yeah, because like we were saying, they're so different here, and I think it could just be ending up what ends up being kind of not the most. It's cruel to call it middle ground, but what ends up being the kind of most the thing that everyone picks, even if not everyone picks it as their favourite.
Yes, exactly. I think the favourite is going to split. It's going to be too divisive. I think a lot of people will hate the favourite. I get the impression that some of the audience comes out of that not having known what they were getting themselves into and being shocked.
My parents, I got a text afterwards saying, "Susanna, we cannot understand why you liked this film. Too much use of the C word."
See me afterwards.
My mum was the exact same. I would like to see A Star Is Born win. I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was very high emotionally and then massive drop down. I thought it was fantastic. But yeah, I think it's going to be Green Book. Yeah. So I think that pretty much concludes it.
We'll be back in a few weeks' time to take back all our words.
Yeah, and be like,
we will eat our own words.
Yeah, who knew that Bo Rap was going to sweep the board?
I mean, it did at the Globes. So literally anything can happen. That's the thing. Thanks a lot for listening, and remember to subscribe to the Radio Times podcast channel on all your general podcast things.
Great plug. We'll see you.
Thanks
see you next
very
week.
much.